Looks like for some reason Marley's logged in as me. We're having some technical difficulties, but not the worst. I think you guys know who I am, who Marley is. So thank you everybody for joining. Looks like we've got a pretty good attendance today. 54 people on. As I mentioned earlier, we're very excited to be buying this project, Latitude at West Ashley. This is a down the fairway value add play. A lot of the work in terms of the heavy lifting has already been done. A lot of deferred maintenance, common areas. They've got a really nice clubhouse, nice pool deck. We'll be upgrading, but we'll be doing some minor upgrades to the common area, but really the brunt of the work here is going to be in the units and the management. There's a lot of loss to lease here, meaning we can just move the rents up without doing much to just a regular level. And then there will be an opportunity to increase them additionally with a renovation premium by upgrading the units and improving the units. So I'll go ahead and start the slideshow. All right, here we are, Latitude at West Ashley. This is a property that we've had under contract for a couple of weeks. This was marketed. This was marketed along with another property in South Carolina. A lot of the attention went towards that one, and we found an opportunity with this one. We competed on it. We were able to win it. A little background on the company. For those of you who don't know us, we've been in business since 05-06. We have now bought, I believe, a little over 6,000 units actually, including everything we have in contract, which is a track record of over $1 billion. We also have approximately $1 billion in portfolio. So we do have a current portfolio size of $1 billion, and our IRRs still are 30 plus. Just a little bit on the metrics here. I'll go over some of this, and once we dive into the details, I will let Marley take over. We are purchasing the property for $51.8 million, which is a phenomenal basis of $166,000 a unit. There's about $10 million of CapEx and other costs, so our total capitalization is $61 million. The untrended return on cost is just under a 6. We're at a 585. We've got a very conservative exit cap of 5. You're rarely seeing anything in this day and age trade at a 5 cap. Everything is sub 5. Plenty of the stuff that we look at is sub 4. Most is probably sub 4. Project level IRR here of 21 and investor level IRR of 17. Marley, I'll let you dive in.
Sure. So just starting from the top here of how we acquired this asset, this was certainly below market price. The reason, even though it was publicly marketed, there's a couple reasons as to why this happened. We essentially had a bit of a perfect storm. The first is, as Max alluded to, there were other properties on the market with a very similar investor profile. There were actually, I think it was 7 at the same time. The broker that had this one himself had 4 at the same time, with offers due within 24 hours of each other. So it just, and it also came towards the end of the year where everyone was looking to close by year end. So it was a very, very, very busy time. And we got all the deals at the same time. We immediately identified this one as the best submarket in Charleston, in our opinion. So we told the broker immediately that this was where our focus was, which provided a certain amount of validity and kind of sincerity to what we were doing. And so he kind of agreed to help us with that one. This is a broker that we worked with before. We've closed a deal with him before. It was a very smooth transaction. And that reputation really helped as well. The last thing that really helped here is just being totally transparent. It was kind of interesting. Several years ago, the sewer pipes and pumps in the area failed. And so part of the property flooded, and there was a long-term disgruntled resident. And on the main review sites for apartments, he posted a picture of that flood about a month before this property was brought to market. A lot of people that looked at it thought that that was a recent condition. It wasn't. And so I think that turned a lot of people off. So there just wasn't as much activity. But to give you a comparative, the other 3 assets that we were looking at, they were in worse submarkets. and they traded for at or higher per square foot and per key than this asset. The last thing I would say is that another submarket of Charleston, which is North Charleston, is getting a lot of press because that's where all the job growth is, but it's not a very great area to live yet. It's still got a ways to go, whereas West Ashley is a much nicer area. And this asset is actually only, I think it's 4 miles away from the main work centers of North Charleston. So it's even closer to the work centers in North Charleston than a lot of residential properties in North Charleston. And I think from the outside of looking in that isn't as familiar with the market, they wouldn't necessarily pick up on that. So that's how we got it at what we feel is a below market price. Just to give you an overview of the Charleston market, there's a few different areas. There's downtown, which is very small, supply constrained. It's primarily single family homes that are in the millions. North of that, you have Mount Pleasant, which is historically the best place to live in Charleston. With the way the market's been now, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Mount Pleasant is over $1 million. And for Charleston salaries, that's just out of reach for the vast majority. So the and a 1-bedroom to rent there is over $2,500. The same distance away to the south, from downtown to the south, is West Ashley. And there you can get 1-bedrooms in the $1,300 and $1,400 range. So it is a massive difference. It's almost half. So what you've seen over the last few years is all these cool restaurants and bars and breweries and everything like that is coming into West Ashley. And the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings are moving to the area. But their demand for product is a higher scale. They want the fully renovated units, but that's just started the last year or two. So there's a lot of properties that don't have this yet. So that's the opportunity. That's why we feel West Ashley is a great market. Latitude itself is geographically positioned in one of the best parts of West Ashley because it is very close. It's less than 10 minutes to both of the major work centers in the entire Charleston MSA. It's really the only micro market where that is the case. And if you look at the demographics, it kind of shows that it's over 80% of the demographics within the 3-mile radius are white collar workers. That's about as high a number as we've seen. The average household income is over $80,000. Given the price of rent, that's a phenomenal comparative. So it's in a very good micro market within the West Ashley area. The asset was bought about 5 years ago, and that owner has done a lot of the heavy work. There's newer roofs. He repaired and patched all the siding. Completely redid the pool, which is beautiful. The clubhouse, frankly, is over-spec'd with what he did. Yeah, there's a picture of it here somewhere. I think we saw earlier. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's it's even nicer in person. So the work and he did very, very light interior renovations. This was one of the first value add deals that company had ever done, and the renovations weren't necessarily what you would recommend to do. So that's the opportunity. This you see is a classic kitchen. There's a variety of units that still have the wide appliances as well. So there's a big delta between what we would the spec we would renovate to and the spec that the asset currently is in. So the interior is a very clear renovation plan. It's very cookie cutter to what we always do. The exterior has, in our opinion, more work to do. Some of it is very easy wins. For example, painting the exterior. Right now, if you look at the exterior, it's the kind of early 90s, 80s beige siding and kind of that 80s brick. So we'll give a nice fresh coat of paint. The landscaping you see here, it's lush, but it's not maintained very well. So that's kind of an easy win too. We'll add nice pool furniture. We'll upgrade the dog park. And those are primarily the exterior work that we'll do. But this is the kind of stuff that makes a huge difference. This picture actually makes the siding look a little bit white. It's actually a very bad beige. So these are some of the easy wins that we'll have.
Marley, we've got one question asking about the flooding and what's been done to cure it. Can you talk a little bit about the drainage and the
Yeah.
pumps?
So what happened with the flooding was at the same time back in 2000, I think it was late 16, but it might have been early 2017. The sewer pipe collapsed, and the pump also failed. This is on the city on city property, and then there was a huge storm, and unsurprisingly, with nothing working, part of the property flooded. The current buyer bought it shortly thereafter, and he worked with the city. The city completely repaired the sewer pipe, put in a new sewer pipe, brand new and oversized, and upgraded to a brand new pump as well that was higher capacity than the previous one. In addition, the owner, if you look, maybe if you're looking on Google Earth or something, you'll see at the front of the property, he actually put in his own drainage as well as a redundant system. And since then, there's been no flooding whatsoever, with the exception of one time where the city was repairing a neighboring pump and therefore turned off the pump that services this property. And it was a light rainstorm, and every property in the neighborhood had a little bit of flooding. This was extremely minor. Only one, I think it was 2 apartments had front porch flooding, which wasn't really flooding. So it was extremely minor. But that was also, again, because the city turned off the pump. But the largest storm in the last 10 years, I believe, in Charleston, which again is a tropical climate, so there's been plenty of other heavy rains. The largest one was, I think, in May 2020, and the property was bone dry. Fortunately, our insurer is actually who has historically insured the site as well. They've been on there for at least 5 years. There's been no claims, no issues. They're extremely comfortable with the property. And they're obviously very, very risk adverse by nature. And they're completely comfortable, which is another point that makes us equally comfortable.
Somebody asked if we'll be adding washers and dryers to the units. The answer is yes. A lot of the units already have washer dryers. A lot of the units have hookups. So all we need to do is add the actual appliances. So the answer is yes. That's easy money. Washer dryers is an in-unit amenity that is probably the single best in-unit amenity. I mean, put yourselves in the shoes of a renter. Is there anything you would rather have than a washer dryer inside your unit so that you don't need to walk outside with your laundry, use a common area laundry room through the rain or snow? Obviously, you're not going to have that in South Carolina, but through the rain or other elements. And to make a long story short, yes, it's just, we found it to be the best. It's always in high demand. People almost always pay for it.
Yep. Another thing to note just about the property is physically is that most of the units are townhome style. This is not a downtown product. It's very close to downtown, but it's not a downtown product. And in the South, people prefer kind of the more single family townhome living. So that gives us an advantage over a lot of the properties as well, because it's 2-story. A lot of the units have backyards, which is unique in the market. So that will also be very, very helpful. I want to go to, let's see. So, okay, we'll talk about comps in a minute. The sources and uses of the property, the loan is just under 43 million. The total equity check is just over 18 million, about 18.4. You can see some of the uses there. The ones to kind of highlight is we're looking at spending about 5.1 million on interior renovations. I believe that's about, I want to say 15 or 16,000 a key. A part of that is because where there aren't washer and dryer connections, it's a few $1,000s to put in those connections in the washer and dryer. So that's why that number is a little bit higher, but the return on cost of that is one of the best things, as Max said, that you can do. The exterior renovations, we have 2 million in there, which is definitely a healthy number. Our goal here is to create a property that is best in class. The micro location is arguably best in class, and some of the other physical elements of the property really make it that it could be positioned as the best. And when you go to sell, we'll be selling a property with no questions, which always helps your cap rate. So, it's a bit heavier lift, but this really creates a beautiful turnkey property. You go to the next slide.
Yep. Sorry. Okay.
This is the cash flow here. This was based upon the metrics that we've talked about. and the operating income, you'll see, and you'll see quite a increase over the first couple of years. We'll talk about that in the comps coming up. There's a very legitimate reason for that when you start to see some of the rent deltas and just how heated the market is. Okay, so this is the unit mix. As you can see, basically from the third line down, it's pretty much all, or most of them are townhomes, which is really advantageous, 173 out of the 246 units. So the vast majority is townhomes, and most of those have their own backyards, which is plenty of backyard space, which is, again, is really, really unique in the apartment world. And then, yeah, there you see 16,500 per unit for the interior. Yep. Okay. So next. These are the, oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, you want to go through the?
Well, I was just gonna say, you can see the second and fourth are the townhome style units. The bedrooms are massive. Some of the largest bedrooms I've seen, given the size of units, which is really quite nice as well. And you can see some of the patios as well that they have. So sales comps, little tricky because there's so many different areas of Charleston, and you know, we want to really look at kind of more recent sales. The two to really zoom in on, there's not really a direct comp, but the two to zoom in on are the fourth from the bottom and the third from the bottom. These geographically are the closest. They're in the same submarket, but there's a couple of unique things here. So Oasis physically is a comparable property, but Oasis has a heavy affordable component. So they have a ceiling on rents. However, we're still paying less per key. They paid 168, we're at 166. We don't have an affordable component. So if you figure the handicap that they have on their rents, it's a much better buy than the $2,000 delta. The other one, Astor Place, this is a very unattractive property. If you look online, they do a good job of marketing it. When you go in person, it's it kind of looks like old Section 8 housing. There's no grass. The amenities are very small. The architecture is terrible. There's no articulation in the buildings. It's really not an attractive property at all. So that, and it's older, but we would expect to be on north of that on a price per key, of course. So these are the comps. If you want to go back real quick, Max.
Yep.
Just running through these real quick. So geographically, the bridge above Latitude at West Ashby to the above right, as soon as you go across that bridge, you're in the Charleston Airport area, which is one of the main work centers within Charleston. The other one is downtown Charleston, which you can barely see, but down to the bottom right corner, you'll see it says 17, a little bridge, double bridge there. You go across that, you're in downtown. So the proximity is really amazing. It's kind of 4 miles, 5 miles to each. And West Ashby is the only location that has that proximity. Even Mount Pleasant, which is a more prime area, it's significantly farther to commute to the airport area. So you have Spanish Oaks and Astor Place. Astor Place we talked about. This is a far inferior property. They're getting 1,700 plus for their 2 bedrooms. So we'll keep that in mind. Spanish Oaks, same thing, far inferior property. They're only doing partial renos, and they're in the upper 16s and 1,700s for 2 bedrooms. 1,800 Ashley West, and I'm zooming in on 2 bedrooms because it's the majority of our product. 1,800 Ashley West. This is an interesting one. It's a nice property. Physically, it's comparable to what Latitude is. The challenge for them is that these units are so small. The 2 bedrooms are basically 800 square feet. When I toured, you have the fridge is next to the oven, which is next to the dishwasher. So there's just no cabinets in the kitchen. And then in their furnished model for the living room, it actually wasn't a couch. It was a oversized love seat because the space was just that small. And in the South, where people want more space, that might work for San Francisco or New York, but in the South, that's just a size too small. And their twos at the 800 square feet are in the 1,500 range. So I think that's just the challenge they have. Then you have Hawthorne West Side. This is physically a nicer property. They've primarily done partial renos. And even with the partial renos, they're still in the 1,700s for the vast majority of the 2 bedrooms. And the location for the most part is, you can see further away in the wrong direction. And while that probably doesn't look like much with traffic, you're probably talking about at least 10 to 15 minutes because it's mostly smaller roads. And again, in the South, adding 15 minutes to a commute that was already, it starts to get a little bit long. So next slide. So here's where you can see the rents on the ones. These are our forecasted post-reno rents. Just for clarity, we are planning on doing a full reno and a full property overhaul. So you can see we're still on the lower side. The Astor Place rents here are actually their classic units because they're going through a renovation program as well. But if you look at their renovated units, at 750 square feet, they're $50 to $70 more than us. And as I mentioned, that is a far inferior property. And then you see Hawthorne West Side at 1,500. And again, it's a partial reno. It's a nicer overall physical property, but it's also further away. So we feel good about being $100 under them. In fact, I think we're being quite conservative. Okay. And then same with the twos here. You can see that for the full renos, in a full reno, the only property that is less expensive than us is 1800 West Ashley, which is the one that I was talking about. That's 840 square feet and just absolutely tiny. The living room and the kitchen is just too small. So that's why they're lower. But even then, our units that are 200 square feet larger, we're only forecasting $50 more. There's a lot of room on the rents here. We're just putting in a really conservative number.
That's just one unit.
Yeah, the threes, we only have one unit. So this is 1800 West Ashley. That's their large unit that you see the kitchen there. That's their largest unit. And that's the full reno. But if you actually look at what are the majority of their units, it's significantly smaller than that. This is Astor Place. You can see to the left the picture that they have there. It's kind of like single corridor, exterior corridor, hotel style. The whole property is like that. This is honestly the best picture I've seen of Astor Place. It's just really a rough property. They did a good job on the interior renos, but still they weren't full. In some cases they did black appliances and things like that. Same with Hawthorne West Side. You can see here a partial reno. The living rooms are carpeted, and there's some other upgrades that they didn't do. But you can see from the left picture, it is a nicer looking property overall with the 3-story garden style. Spanish Oaks. Again, these are some really attractive pictures of Spanish Oaks. This is about as good as I've seen it look. This is a much inferior property, and we are still coming in slightly under their rents. You can see they're 1,100 square foot, 2 and 1.5 bath, which compares identical. We have the same thing, 2 plus 1.5, 1,100 square feet, and we're forecasting 1,625, and that's for their partial reno. We're doing a full. So you can see where our rents are quite conservative.
All right. Let's address some Q&A. Marley, do you have access? I'm going to answer a few. Marley, do you have access to the Q&A box?
I do.
Okay, so let's stop the screen share. Okay. Actually, Peter asked for an explanation on the fees. That's a great question. This one's a little bit outside of our regular box. Main difference being we are syndicating out part of this with CrowdStreet, and CrowdStreet charges an upfront fee. So what we did, and we didn't want the rest of our investor base to pay for that. So what we did is we added an additional fee at the property level, which we're going to rebate back to our investors. So that way it's a level playing field. So back to the top. There's a question about flood insurance. Yes, there is flood insurance or insurance for flooding. It's the same thing. So yes, there's flood insurance. Somebody asked if it's closing this year or next year. It is closing as of right now. It's December 17th, 2021. So it's pretty tight. We're going to ask for a few extra days. We'll see if we get it, but the current closing date is December 17th, 2021. Are there elevators? No, it's garden style.
It's only 2 stories. So there's just no need.
The DSCR on day one is going to be pretty close to a 1.0 because it's a very, very low cap rate, maybe just under. But as we start to roll units and renovate, we'll probably be at 120. On the actual DSCR, 120 by end of year 1 or early into year 2. Going back to some of the cost, syndication and CrowdStreet fee, I explained. Due diligence, we budgeted fat for due diligence. Those aren't any costs that go to us. Those are just strictly to the outside engineers and zoning, environmental, appraisal, all that fun stuff. Loan costs, there's origination fee to the lender and a point to Continental, which is an affiliate of Tryon. There's a cash on cash to investors. Somebody asked about cash flow. Marley, what's our average cash on cash? About 8?
Just south of that.
Okay.
It is 7.45.
Okay. Is there any potential for state regulation like rent control? Absolutely not. South Carolina is one of the most business-friendly states in the nation. They were, once the eviction moratorium ended, they were one of the first ones to get going, and evictions are already happening, and the current owner is already evicting. That was one of the questions that I asked when I walked the property of the regional. That's a question I asked of the regional manager. She said they already had a few evictions in the pipeline at this asset in particular, and that by the time we close, it will probably be delinquency free, unless there are, of course, any new non-paying tenants. Does Max ever smile? Occasionally. Do we see the market rents being sustained over the next few years? Yeah, we think we'll go up. There's a very high money supply currently at a macro level. At a micro level, Charleston is experiencing in-migration every day. Phenomenal economic fundamentals. Charleston, going back to what we were talking about earlier with South Carolina being very business friendly as a state, the city of South Carolina actually has quite a few barriers of entry. So this is not a low barrier market like Phoenix or Vegas. This would be considered a high barrier market. They actually had an eviction. I'm sorry, all these moratoriums, you mix them all up. They had a moratorium on new development a few years back. So it is, not the easiest to build in Charleston.
And also, just a note on the economic drivers. Charleston's obviously a high tourist city, but there's significant other sectors that are growing massively. One is the port. The port is currently being expanded. There's a couple large military bases not far from the site. Those are being expanded. And then Boeing at the airport. One of the reasons the airport became such a huge work hub is because Boeing built all their 787s there. And they're expanding that platform as well. A massive expansion for that matter. And then add in all the ancillary companies that are associated with Boeing that will also be expanding as a result. So those are just some of the drivers that are increasing the population and job growth in the micro area.
And we actually, so we're pretty close to Boeing, and we've got quite a few Boeing employees at the asset. That was one of the questions I asked when I was on site. Question with regard to percentage of equity coming from CrowdStreet versus everybody else. We've had quite a few people ask if Fund 3 is going to be participating. The answer is yes. Fund 3 will be an investor in the deal, probably to the tune of $2 million, maybe a touch more. So it'll probably be approximately 8 million from CrowdStreet, 2 million from the fund, and the balance from our investors. Somebody asked about $25,000 investments. No, we will not be doing $25,000 investments in this investment at all. CrowdStreet also will not be doing $25,000 investments. That became an issue on our last deal with CrowdStreet, where we had some of our investors go through CrowdStreet, and we have to pay for that. And what winds up happening is we wind up paying CrowdStreet for our own investors, which is not really the spirit of what we're doing. So it's going to be $50,000 minimum investment across the board. Any large investors, not really outside the fund. There might be one for 2 million. That would be the largest. A couple questions about the loan. It's a floating rate loan, which is typical of bridge debt. It's a 4-year loan. Somebody asked why 4 years. 4 years is actually a great amount of time for bridge. What you want to avoid when borrowing bridge are 2-year bullets. We haven't done one of those in years. We avoid those like the plague. This is a 3 + 1 + 1. The first +1 is effectively free, and you don't have to meet any tests. So it's a 4-year loan. Hold on, looks like we've got 2 boxes here. There's a Q&A box and a chat box. LTV is going to be approximately 70 to 72% loan to cost. Will Tryon be investing? Yes, we have a 5% co-invest into our fund, and our fund is an investor in the deal. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? Somebody asked about accelerated depreciation. We likely will not be doing cost seg. That's something we need to think about. We'll need to talk about internally, but it's unlikely because it'll be probably a 3-year hold, in which case accelerated depreciation doesn't really make sense, because you're going to have to recapture the depreciation at a significantly higher rate if you accelerate it. And we find that to cause more harm than good. Waterfall is 75-25 after an 8% pref with a catch-up. It's our standard waterfall. Neighborhood is Class B. Workforce, just your typical Class B close-in suburb, which is what we love about it. It's close to suburban jobs, it's close to urban jobs, so it's fantastic in that sense. Project level IRR, somebody else has a 21. Oh, one thing I'd like to mention, this is not in any of the chats, but there was a mistake when we sent out the email. The email said there was an investor level IRR of 19. The investor level IRR is actually closer to 17. There was one mistake in one cell at the partnership level. So the project level IRR did not have any mistakes. That was correct. There was a mistake in the distributions. So it's a 17, it's not a 19. Somebody's asking to explain vacancy loss, but it's just a very straightforward vacancy loss, which will be, we'll have higher vacancy in the early days because we'll be renovating. And then as we stabilize, we'll have more of a traditional 5% physical plus some bad debt and concessions, economic. Oh, renovation. Renovation will be managed in-house. We have a project management team. We have a group that we've been using who is active in the Carolinas, who's bidding it, and we'll be using them for the renos. I think that covers everything. We'll be posting the property through our investor portal to invest. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, Marley, Andrew. You all know where to find us. Max at Tryon Properties, M. Dominguez at Tryon Properties, and A. Lucas at Tryon Properties. And we look forward to hearing from everybody. There's the link inside the chat box. We look forward to hearing from everybody. Please feel free to answer any questions. Feel free to call us, email us. And this is a very exciting investment. We're very excited to purchase in Charleston. And we are optimistic it will be very, very successful as usual. Thank you everybody for your time. Really appreciate you taking your time out on a weekday to join us. We hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.